The Corsairs of Umbar expansion has launched for the Lord of the Rings Online, and today I want to talk about the state of the expansion. Now, this video is going to be a little bit different because we're actually just taking a stroll through Umbar, the new city in the expansion, for this video. And I will be live recording my commentary as we go through this. But the reason I am doing that is because I just want to chat with y'all about the expansion, because there has been a lot of negative sentiment in the community with the expansion launch, and I think a lot of frustrating aspects of it, but I also want to provide or maybe highlight some of the better aspects of Umbar as well. So I do have some notes, but no script as I usually would for a video of this style, and I think one of the first things I want to talk about is how this has kind of felt like one of the worst expansion and really major update launches or releases in a while that I at least remember being a part of. Now, there is one very positive of Umbar that I do want to highlight right away, is that there hasn't actually been much server lag, at least in my experience, so that has been nice to see. I know that was a huge thing with the recent Gundabad expansion that is in contrast with this, but otherwise, it just feels so unfinished and unrefined. There are actually a lot of broken things with the expansion. I know I made a whole video on the crafting overhaul and I'll talk about that later, but that is like half implemented essentially. And then there are a lot of other buggy things that have, I think, really driven a lot of negative comments in the community and just not much excitement or positivity about the new expansion launch, which does again have some amazing things with it. So I really do think all in all, this might be the worst expansion launch we have had in a while. And I've hinted a lot at bugs that we'll get to in a moment, but it's actually not because of the bugginess that I personally haven't even started the questing story leveling experience in Umbar. I've done some exploration of the systems, and the landscape is the other thing. So I have experienced quite a bit of what there is to see, but I haven't actually even properly played through Umbar yet, but that's not really due to the bugginess, so we'll get on that as well. But the first thing I want to talk about is the crafting revamp. Now, I made a whole video on this, but the crafting revamp is, to me, it was the single most exciting thing from Umbar outside of the Umbar content itself, because I love crafting, except I have not enjoyed crafting in LOTRO all that much recently, so I was super excited for that, but it was a pretty big letdown to see that the crafting revamp was just half missing, and importantly without any announcements. And there have actually, since I made that video, been announcements after like a very large overwhelming number of community posts in the LOTRO forums. The developers finally started to comment on it. But even the updates we have gotten with that haven't even addressed everything missing with the crafting revamp, so there's still some concern there, at least on my part. But another thing, in that video, I actually forgot to even mention the Forester event. There is a Forester crafting event for the Forester crafting profession in LOTRO that was released in July, yet it hasn't actually been active for what, like 4 months since it was supposed to have launched. I don't even know how long of a period it's been active for, maybe like a week or two in total that I can at least right now remember off the top of my head. So that's like a whole other thing and a whole other system of things that we haven't really had much added that I think was really supposed to work in combination with the overall crafting revamp. But again, I have a whole video on crafting, and that is not the focus of this video. There are actually some other issues. So there have been story quests disabled. So the Songs of Wave and Wind, the new book quest that you can do with Umbar, some of those quests have been disabled. There's also some other landscape quests that have had to be disabled because of bugs and being broken, and even tasks. You cannot actually do any Umbar tasks because those are broken as well. And there are even some other things that I've seen reported in the community that have not been officially commented on by the developers. So there's a lot of rough spots there. But for what we do have, there is actually one more thing I want to highlight with the story quest, and that's that Standing Stone Games did not learn their lesson from the Gundabad start of new book quests. For people that missed what happened with Gundabad, that started essentially with chapter 5, I believe, of the Legacy of Durn and Trials of Dwarves, which was the name of the book quest that went through Gundabad. You had to have actually completed all 4 of the previous books, or chapters if you want to call them that, of the story to actually be able to start Gundabad, which involved content dating back quite a bit, and it was relevant for Gundabad, of course, because the story built on itself, but it wasn't really necessary to just enter Gundabad. So eventually they changed that. It might have been a week or two after launch, but in Umbar, it's maybe not as big of a deal because it's chapter 2 that starts you on the actual Umbar expansion content, but still, you have to complete chapter 1 first. So I think that was a pretty big negative, and it just showed me that Standing Stone Games did not actually learn from that mistake and those changes they had to make with Gundabad. And this time it seems like they're doubling down and not going to be changing that, which I think is a bit unfortunate to see. And it's just one of those things that doesn't drive positivity in the community or even in a video like this. So all in all here, there have really just been a lot of issues with the launch experience in Umbar, and it's just put a damper on the excitement for it, which I think it just kind of, kills excitement for general future playtime in the expansion, and for me, like actually getting started playing through the Umbar content on whichever character I will be doing that on. Okay, so there's been so much negativity right now, and we're only continuing with that, so I do want to highlight how beautiful this area is. We'll talk about that later, but look at the water, the canals here, the new architecture, just building designs they have. It is quite amazing. That's why I'm enjoying taking this walk through Umbar for the background of this video. So let's start to talk about why I have not actually started questing through the Umbar content, even though I have had more than one opportunity at the point of recording this video. And as y'all might have seen, I've been even continuing to play Return to Moria rather than starting the Umbar questing. And it really boils down to two issues. I think the first one is the Mariner class, so I decided that I would try Umbar on my Mariner character, but what I also decided after playing him a little bit more is it's just not a class for me, which is not a problem. Not every class in LOTRO has to be designed specifically for me in particular to enjoy. That would be kind of ridiculous. But it is a reality that I thought it'd be super fun and thematic to do it on the new Mariner class that I initially had some enjoyment on, but I just don't enjoy it enough at high levels. Some of the gameplay elements bother me, and it just does not create good gameplay flow for me personally. I know that's a very subjective thing with gameplay flow, so I do want to highlight that as well. Oddly enough, I do enjoy the low-level gameplay on Mariner, though, which is very unusual for me. I think it's the only class where I can say I like it at low levels better than high levels. I also do enjoy it, I will say, the DPS spec even in group content. I also oddly enjoy the yellow line and solo content. That's pretty fun for me for solo challenges, but not for general landscape questing and leveling. So I am going to have to decide a new character to take through the Umbar expansion content, and I'm curious what you all think, so please comment. Maybe Runekeeper, Beorning, probably not Captain. Right now I would lean through Runekeeper, but I do want to get to the other issue about me not starting Umbar content and not actually even questing through it on the launch day. And that is the Gondor versus Umbar issue. The expansion, it brings a brand new region to Middle-earth, and that is Harad. It is a small part of Harad, but it's Umbar, and we also have the Shield Isles, which I consider to be more Umbar than Gondor. Yet the the majority of landscape content is actually in Gondor. But I am so much more excited for everything in Umbar because it's new. That's across the Bay of Belfalis from Gondor, and it's just more exciting to me. I want to go to Umbar, quest in Umbar, explore Umbar in the Corsairs of Umbar expansion. I don't necessarily want to just continue west in Gondor. But don't get me wrong, I actually am really excited to have post-war Gondor. I just don't think it's very fitting for the Corsairs of Umbar expansion. To repeat myself, the key word here, if y'all cannot tell, is Umbar. As we are even walking through this, I just love this place so much, even if I'm not a big fan of cities, and even the Mediterranean architecture isn't my favorite thing, but I just love seeing it in LOTRO and being able to explore and walk through it as I am right now. So really, I just don't think the majority of landscape content for an expansion called Corsairs of Umbar should be in Gondor. Maybe it fits with the story, but to me, I just think the release timing and the scheduling of that and how the content is distributed in the expansion before the expansion, even potentially post-expansion, I just don't think that has worked out all that well, and has definitely not helped bring excitement. I made a video on this being concerning. I didn't realize it would be this concerning where I just want to play the expansion quests on launch, but it kind of has been. But that's also in combination with these other issues again. It's not solely because of the whole Gondor versus Umbar thing. Also, can I point out at this point that by some miracle, I've actually stayed on track with the path that I somewhat loosely planned for this video. And one more thing I do want to point out on this topic is that I don't actually expect the Gondor content to be bad, but I just really can't get as excited for it compared to if the expansion, say, just started actually with us sailing to Umbar. But on top of all of that, another thing that just brings a lack of excitement is actually no instances, but that was at least known. Even if it is a disappointment, I love having group content on launch of expansion to run. It was a bit of a disappointment, but that was at least known prior to the launch of the expansion. I think one of the bigger letdowns here that was not known was the lack of missions content. That's been pretty standard in LOTRO for a while, and I know not everybody likes missions, but for me, that is something that can be great to get a character a little bit of XP. It's an easy piece of content to just boot up that's related to like the new expansion here, Umbar, and there's just a complete lack of missions. I don't know if there are other repeatables or public instances or resource instances or things like that at level 150 because I haven't gotten there yet, but there just seems to be a lack of that type of content with Umbar, a huge focus on the story and quests, which I usually think is what LOTRO does best, but, you know, having these other forms of content, I think, can really just make an expansion feel more complete and like an expansion. Right now, this just feels like a quest pack that is leading up to an expansion of sorts. That's maybe not the best description, but sometimes it is how I feel about this, just a very large quest pack rather than an expansion at this point. But given all these issues and kind of lack of my own motivation to play Umbar, and you've seen I've continued to actually return to more content on my channel, I have decided that I am going to delay my Umbar questing content a little bit more as maybe Standing Stone Games works through some of the issues, but also as I actually decide which character that I want to take through Umbar. But as we are talking about my plans to play through Umbar, what about the content that we do have in Umbar? One of the main reasons, again, that I wanted to just take this walk through Umbar and not just drone on about how bad Umbar has been with the launch experience, I wanted to take this stroll because I want to highlight what is good about Umbar, and I think right here is actually a great example of the landscape. Like, take a look around here, look at what we have again. Well, this is maybe a little bit more Gondorian looking architecture than we previously had, but look at the water. They have made some great changes to water that were not really present in beta, I know, and even in like off the coast of Gondor, the ocean waters we had there. And I know that water usually looks great in LOTRO, but from what I've seen in this expansion, and especially the shield isles of Umbar, it is a whole step up from anywhere that we have previously had in game. It really just looks beautiful to me. I also think this location is a great place to highlight some of the new flora that we have, just stuff we have not seen in LOTRO. Some of it is maybe a little bit reminiscent of Evandem, which would be the closest comparison, but that's not even really close to any of this to me. So while the environment is very different, I think it is great for LOTRO, and I honestly have been loving every minute of it. And you know, I've been talking a lot about the Shield Isles, so here we finally are, and kind of unfortunately, this actually highlights the exact issues I was talking about with being more excited for Umbar than Gondor. This is where I want to be in. This is where I want to start my questing experience. Again, not in Gondor. It's like we really do have all this amazing stuff in Umbar, but I just cannot be that excited about starting questing in Gondor. Even if there are no boat mounts, which would be absolutely amazing here, I still love the idea of exploring and journeying through these islands. But yes, in due time, I will finally begin my playthrough of Umbar and actually make it through questing and leveling in this zone. And it may not take me a couple months to start, but I really think that after a couple months and few updates, Umbar could be a top-notch LOTRO expansion. There is a very amazing base for the expansion that is present on launch, even if it does feel very incomplete for a full expansion release. I think that crafting could be amazing again, especially if we don't have any single-use recipes. And as far as endgame goes, I think there's huge room for improvement. I know I've been fairly critical about the Gondor, or the Gundabad rather, endgame content that we had in the overall level 140 cap era. So I think there's some huge improvements that could be made there. And because we don't have anything in Umbar, it's still entirely possible that those improvements will be present. So I definitely think that could be something to look forward to. And there's just so much that can go right with Umbar in the future, but right now it really is feeling overall very incomplete, even if the landscape itself that we have been journeying through feels a lot more complete and again is pretty amazing to highlight. I ultimately think though that the overall expansion product was just pushed out quite a bit before it was ready without enough pre-release testing as well. Also, can I highlight these Corsair houses? They might be some of the best in the entirety of LOTRO. Too bad you cannot have a housing neighborhood right there. But one of the broader things that I did also want to talk about in this video is my future playtime in LOTRO. So I still do enjoy this game quite a bit, but I really think that this Umbar period could be quite pivotal for my future in LOTRO. If Umbar does not pull itself together, I'm honestly at this point not sure how much LOTRO I'll be playing in 2024. My playtime in 2023 has already been very limited because I haven't been enjoying the 140 cap that much, and there are so many times that you can run through low level content. I've been getting kind of tired and bored of it, really. So that is something we'll have to see in the future, but I'm really curious what your all's thoughts are on the Umbar expansion so far, and maybe what you've seen of the landscape today that's maybe, hopefully at least, a bit more positive, because again, I am absolutely loving just swimming through this area right now. But I think this is where we'll wrap up our walk through Umbar and I guess swim through the Shield Isles. If y'all enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and thanks for watching, everyone.